Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk about 7 specific measures that I think issues that need addressing if we're ever to return to some semblance of normal governance. And I think they're all very important, and I think they're issues which probably won't be addressed, but we are now hurtling into some sort of abyss. We know we've got a huge economic crisis coming up. We've got a cost of living crisis, and we all know the problems with government and how it's become corrupt and dishonest and so on. And we really have to do something, otherwise we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in big trouble. But before I do that, I just want to say a few words about the ongoing competition to become captain of the Titanic as it sinks below the waves. That is to say, the Conservative Party leadership campaign, where we've got these 2 hapless characters going around talking ever more right-wing rubbish to a very small number of people who they hope are going to vote for them. It does appear certainly that Liz Truss is going to win, and if that is the case, then I think Sunak is the luckiest man in the world, because what he will have escaped is going to be an absolute nightmare, and Truss is just totally incapable of coping with the problems we have. Despite the fact she keeps going around telling everybody that she gets things done. This is her constant mantra. She gets things done. She knows what needs doing. She's been in government for the last, God knows how many years, but she knows what needs doing and she gets things done. I think the implication is that all the other ministers in government previously, when she's been getting things done, I think they've all been going to the office and reading a book all day and then going home at 4 o'clock. I don't think anybody else knows how to get anything done. They don't do anything. She's the only one who can get things done. So that's a very good reason for backing her. And of course, she said that she's going to let Johnson off. He won't have to go through the ordeal of appearing before the Standards Committee if she gets elected. So that's nice too. And I'm sure all the elderly ladies and gentlemen in Bournemouth and Cheltenham and so on who are going to vote for Truss are all going to think it's a very good thing that they're wonderful. Their saint Johnson is going to be let off. Sunak, at the same time, he put himself up for 2 interviews, one with Andrew Neil, which was a bit of a disaster, and another one with Nick Robinson, which wasn't much better. Truss, of course, she knows that either of those interviews would absolutely eat her, and so she's not been available. She's not doing interviews with serious interviewers. Sunak's been going around the same old stuff, I'm going more and more right, and he's also done a U-turn on giving help to poor people and so on. Truss, on the other hand, she says that she doesn't want to give out a handout. She wants to have tax cuts. So what she's offering, as I understand it, she's offering tax cuts particularly to people who don't pay any tax. So that's very nice that she's going to do that. And of course, rich people who do pay tax, they'll get tax cuts as well, which would be nice. That's the sort of people that are going to vote for her, presumably. And I think one thing I saw last week, an ad which kind of epitomised the attitude of these people to the sort of audience they've got, this 150,000 Conservative Party members. It was an ad that Sunak put out. It was on Twitter and it didn't stay there very long, so I presume someone must have pulled it, or perhaps it wasn't very popular. But what it showed a man walking into a room. The man was supposed to be Sunak, but all we saw was the top of his trousers, bottom of his shirt, wearing a white shirt and so on. He was carrying a big cardboard box, and on it was written EU laws, EU legislation, I believe it was. And he put these 2 boxes on a desk. Beside the desk, there was a little shredding machine, paper shredding machine. And this figure turned around, went out of the room, and then came back in wheeling a big industrial shredding machine. And then he proceeded to kick the little shredding machine out the way to make way for this big one, because there is so much shredding to do. All EU laws that have been made in the last 45 years are to be shredded. Truss said exactly the same thing. She said by the end of next year she hopes to have got rid of all EU laws. And these EU laws have been, which have been made over the last 45 years whilst we've been members of the EU, they're all laws for our benefit. We've been involved in making these laws, and they're laws concerning our everyday lives, safety, concerning safety of products, concerning all sorts of things that benefit us. And the vast majority of these laws are good, positive laws which help us and improve our lives. Yet the whole lot are going, the whole lot, everything is going out, and then we're going to start all over again. So if, for example, under the EU, there'd been a department that had worked on laws for perhaps a component in a car to make it safer, and to introduce a regulation that any manufacturer of cars throughout Europe would have to actually conform with those new regulations on that particular car component. We're going to scrap that. It's EU law. Scrap it. Scrap it. We'll design our own one, a different one. So anybody making cars in this country, of course, will have to make a different standard to match the EU standards, because we don't want any EU laws. We don't want anything to do with any EU laws. It's the EU and these EU laws that have made it so difficult for us. We have been, as is popularly believed amongst the pro-Brexit people, we've been bossed around by the EU. We've been told what to do by the EU. Unelected bureaucrats, that's civil servants, unelected bureaucrats have been making laws which we've had to obey. This is men and women in Brussels going to the office of a morning. They say, well, let's make a law. Oh, what should we do? Let's make the banana's got to be straight and not curved. Okay. All right, we'll write that out. Yep, type it out. We'll send that around. And from then on, everybody in Europe, as a result of what these civil servants decided, had to obey that law. Being bossed around. We've taken back control. That can't happen anymore. Exactly what the Parliament was doing there, and all the thousands and thousands of civil servants examining all this legislation were doing. Who knows what they were doing? It's the bureaucrats that were making it, the faceless bureaucrats, bossing us around. So these two extremely tedious people are just trudging round, and it does appear that Truss is going to become Prime Minister. Now, I've been making these videos for about 18 months now, and from time to time people say, well, you come on here, you rant about this and rant about that, and why don't you come up with some suggestions? Why don't you say what you do? And I never responded, because really, frankly, I'm just a lone voice. I'm no better or worse than anybody else. I've got an opinion. I've got opinions, and I just happen to put them on YouTube. But I did start thinking about the state we're in, and clearly we are in a terrible, terrible state, and it's getting worse and worse. And everybody knows that there's a great sense of depression and anxiety throughout the country. And we know that there are going to be problems with food and people managing, and people are going to be starving this winter and so on. And there's no sign. You can't sort of look forward as you can with many crises. Like, for example, the pandemic. We all knew that sooner or later it would end, although it's not completely ended. But we all knew that life would return to more or less to normal at some stage. With this economic situation, particularly because of Brexit, there is no end in sight. It is just going to get worse and worse. The economy is going to get weaker and weaker. And I started looking at how it is we got in this mess, and how our political system allowed us to get into this mess. And I've got 7 suggestions as to how I think we should change things. As I say, I don't think any of these is likely to come into effect, but they would all benefit us considerably and give us a chance of at least returning to some sort of semblance of proper normal government. Had we not had a dishonest Prime Minister and a corrupt and dishonest government, then many of these things would not have been necessary. But without a written constitution, we have to really do something. The first thing I wanted to mention, and please don't all run away, it's the voting system. It's first past the post versus proportional representation. Of all countries in Europe, we are the only one with first past the post. And indeed, throughout the world, the only places you'll find, apart from America, which is a exception, the only places you ever see first past the post are in former British colonies. And it's just a totally unfair system. You have a system whereby in this country we've got 650 constituencies, 380 of them are considered safe seats, which means that whoever the sitting MP is going to get re-elected, or the same party is going to remain in power, and a huge swing would be needed to change that seat. So you can say 380 odd seats, you can forget about them, they're foregone conclusions. And of the others, if you're in a constituency and one candidate gets 50,001 votes and the second candidate gets 50,000, the votes of the 50,000 are then totally disregarded. They don't go towards anything else. That's it, finished. And it also means that stronger parties need far fewer votes to bigger parties, need far fewer votes to gain seats than smaller parties. It makes it almost impossible for smaller parties to become established or to exist. For example, in the 2019 election, the Conservatives they needed 38,500 votes, I think it was, per seat. The Labour needed 50,400. The Liberals needed 336,000 votes per seat. And the poor Greens, with their single seat, needed 866,000 votes. Well, this is unfair. This is totally unfair. Millions and millions of people are voting, and the votes are just wasted. It's an absolute nonsense. It is not democracy. And with the sort of government we've got at the moment, trying to reinforce their position, making it more and more difficult for other parties to compete, it's getting more and more moving towards a one-party state. And I mean, that's not beyond the possibility of this government. I mean, that's very much what they seem to want, and it is quite frightening the way it is all going. So the second thing I would like to do is to reform the House of Commons. I think this idea where you have two parties opposite each other, or you have a government and an opposition, and they just shout at each other, they're both totally entrenched. It's all part of first past the post. And you have this scene that the whole world just gawps at every week, whereby you have Prime Minister's Question Time, just a lot of shouting and bawling, and people behaving like idiots and like children. It's so unedifying, and it's just absolute nonsense. One of the things with proportional representation would be that you would have more parties, and it is obvious that we should have a parliament which, like just about every other parliament in the world, is semicircular, where you get more collaboration, more compromise, more discussion, as opposed to just shouting at each other, which is what we have at the moment. And of course, when you've got a very strong party, as we've got a government as we've got now, and they can do anything and just override Parliament. And in fact, Johnson, to a large extent, has done that. I mean, he didn't give a jot about Parliament. I mean, he even goes along and just lies to Parliament. I mean, he just treats it with contempt because he has almost absolute power, has had. The third thing I would do is, incidentally, as far as the House of Commons is concerned, or Houses of Parliament, turn it into a museum, turn it into, I don't know, turn it into a hotel, doesn't really matter. Build a new modern Parliament somewhere else. It's 2022. It's not 1850. The third thing I would do, I think this is very important, I would completely abolish the House of Lords. I think it is absolute madness that we have a chamber of Parliament. Admittedly, they have very limited powers. It is stuffed with people who are, generally speaking, people who've been lucky in life. They're people who've done well, they've made money, they've had contacts, they've lived in certain social circles whereby they've been able to get positions and so on. They've had a lot of good fortune in life, and at the end they're rewarded by being made my lord and my lady, and they have all the privileges that go with that, and it's an absolute nonsense. And when you have a really corrupt Prime Minister, as we have, you get the situation where the son of a KGB officer, who happens to be Johnson's friend, is in the House of Lords. I mean, what nonsense is that? And you get his brother. What's his brother done? He was a minister for a short while. I can't remember what he was a minister of. He didn't do anything notable. He's in the House of Lords. His friend, Zach Goldsmith, who provides him with very expensive holidays at his very expensive properties abroad, he's in the House of Lords. What's he done? And you've got people like Botham and Ian Botham. The whole thing is an absolute nonsense. It should be completely swept away, and also titles should be swept away, because this whole title thing tends to reinforce this ridiculous class system that we have in this country, where people are looked up to if they're a lord or a lady and treated with deference and all the rest. It's absolutely ridiculous nonsense. So, House of Lords, get rid of it. Next thing, I think we need to look at, and I think this is really, really important, we need to look at money. We had I think it is. I would abolish any political contributions and any payments to any political party. I think political funding should all come from tax. Parties should be funded according to their size, the number of members they've got. But the idea that we have right now, this extremely corrupt system whereby the control of the party, of the Conservative Party, is largely the Conservative Party is largely under the control of very, very rich people who have a great deal of influence and a great deal to offer. And just think about it, if you're somebody who's very rich, or you've got a business that's got a lot of money, and you pay an MP £100,000 to help him with his election campaign, perhaps, or whatever, that MP owes you a favour. And if you're very rich and you've got a yacht somewhere, you say to an MP, come down for a couple of weekends, a couple of days down to Nice on my boat and so on, and have some champagne and caviar and all the rest of it. That MP is in debt. And it's all completely wrong, because we know now that big money is having a huge influence on our politics. And someone like Johnson, who's really only interested in himself and in what he can get out of everything, is no doubt being paid all sorts of money for various favours or perceived favours or hoped for favours. On the other side, you've got the Labour Party, you've got the unions backing the Labour Party. It's wrong that unions should be able to hold sway over the Labour Party. The Labour Party be very careful what they do, because they might upset the unions and so on. It's nonsense. These MPs should all be impartial, and they should all be, not impartial, I mean, obviously they're partial to their parties, but I mean they should all be free from financial dependence on anybody. And I would certainly look at whether or not MPs should have second jobs. I'd probably pay them a lot more money, because although they're paid an awful lot and they get a lot in expenses, by world standards, they're not enormously well paid. And I think we do need to attract some talent. I mean, why anybody right now would want to be an MP, I cannot imagine. Next thing is, I think we need to tackle this business of or how easy it is to come to London and buy property in the name of companies based in tax havens and all the rest of it. I'd look at the whole tax haven thing and see if that can it be somehow abolished, or there's some way of preventing people using tax havens. I think that it's absolutely absurd that so many people are able to hide money. I read something in private, I think last week, about a company that had made a few 100 million out of PPE contracts, and the money had all been lent to a company in the Isle of Man. Then it'll be transferred to a company in the Cayman Islands, no doubt, and it'll go round the rounds, and nobody will know where the money's gone, and that company will probably go bust in due course, and that'll be that. And you have all these people coming to London, all these criminals from all over the world buying property, because if, for example, you're a Nigerian and you've embezzled 100 million from the government, or if you're a Mexican drug lord and you've got 100 million you want to put somewhere safe, what's better than come to London, buy a few houses, and go away? That money's as safe as can be. It's only going to appreciate. And we're all set up for this, because it's been sort of almost unofficial government policy for years now to encourage all this money coming to the country. They talk about inward investment, people coming in. I would demand that the actual owners of all of these properties that belong to foreigners in London, over, say, £5 million worth or something, or 2 million perhaps, I don't know, that they're declared, and that the actual owner would have to be a human being, and they would have to show where they got the money from. If not, the properties would be confiscated. You can't have London as a money box for criminals, because it encourages people who are dealing in drugs and making the money out of drugs, out of corruption, out of all sorts of criminal activity, just come to London. I know somebody who lives in central London. He lives opposite a row of terraced houses. Very, very smart terraced houses, about 20 of them. And they cost about £10 million each. And he's lived there opposite this row of houses for quite a long time. And I was talking to him about this business about people buying properties and foreigners just buying properties in London. He said, well, that row of houses opposite, he said there are only 2 of them that ever have lights on in them. The rest of them are all dark. And you see this all over London, the whole blocks of new flats, all sold to Malays and Singaporeans and Chinese and all the rest of it. nobody ever comes there. It's just money box. And all the time we're short of housing and all the rest of it. And all the time prices are so high that most people have got no chance of ever buying a house, especially young people now, no chance whatsoever. And yet there's all this dirty money pouring into London as a money box. Stop it. Demand to know who owns these houses. Don't accept any companies at all, and demand to know where that money came from. If not, confiscate the houses. And likewise, this money laundering, I do know a little bit about this through somebody who's much involved in it. And London is just open for money laundering. It is absolutely wide open for it. If you've got money you want to launder, drug money, whatever, stolen money, come to London, open some businesses, and just do whatever you like. You don't pay any taxes. You can evade everything. The system is so easy to play. And people do it. As I say, I know somebody who's quite closely involved in all this, who has met these people who are actually running huge groups of companies laundering money. And they say there are 3 places in the world where the government will never touch you if you're laundering money. One is Dubai, obviously. The other, surprisingly, is Turkey. And the third is London. They said if you come to London, nobody's going to touch you. The government won't touch you. HMRC won't touch you. And this particular contact I happen to know has been pursuing somebody who, for various reasons, for about 10 years. And HMRC have written to him, the CEO, I've seen a letter written to him by the CEO of HMRC saying, do not, and he has information about these people which is not available from other sources. HMRC have written to him saying, do not send us any information because doing so might compromise our confidentiality agreements, as other staff might see it, and others we don't want to know. I've seen another letter he has, which also comes from the head of customer compliance. That's number 3, I think she is, number 3 in HMRC, writing virtually the same thing, do not send us any information. He also has a letter which I've seen from a minister in the Treasury saying, HMRC have asked you not to send them information because, and if you continue to do so, or if you do so, they may have difficulty protecting your identity as the source. Is that a country that doesn't want to have money launderers here? That doesn't want people coming here washing all their dirty money? No, that's a government, a country which is encouraging it. And they all know it. These people are laundering their money through all these businesses. And a lot of these businesses, their businesses are obviously not doing enough to pay their expenses. Employing illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, whatever you want to call them. Evading all sorts of taxes and just laughing at the authorities. Meantime, other businesses that are trying to pay their taxes are struggling and going out of business. But this is how rotten this government has become. The whole country is in such a mess because of this dreadful leadership, and all, as I say, all these things I'm suggesting, these 7 points. I mean, then very little is likely to happen. The government's very happy with things as they are. They're hoping, I presume, to get elected next time, though heaven knows with Truss. I'd be surprised if they're there in 6 months' time. But anyway, the final thing I wanted to mention, which has nothing to do with any of the above, is concerning global warming. Global warming is far and away, it is infinitely more important than any of the other things I've mentioned already. It is just so important, and yet it seems to be one of those things that comes up in the news a bit. We've seen a lot about it in the last week or two because the weather's been lovely and sunny and all the rest of it. But I mean, it's just gathering a pace. We can see it is. I mean, you can't imagine how things are going to be in 10 or 20 years' time if we continue to warm the planet the way we are doing at the moment. And it seems to me that it should be an absolute emphasis of government to do something about this, to encourage even small things. I mean, why, for example, is there not an absolute obsession throughout the country with insulating homes? Why is the government not giving that absolute priority? Why, and that may be a very good reason, somebody can explain to me, why, for example, are people not being encouraged to put solar panels all over their houses, all over their roofs? I mean, that I mean, we get so much sunshine now. It's been like living in the Mediterranean sometimes. I mean, why are we wasting all that? Why are we not capturing some of that to generate electricity? It just seems so obvious. And why are we not planting more trees? It seems to me there are so many open spaces, so many people got gardens. Why are we not planting trees everywhere? Why is the government not running campaigns to encourage people to plant trees? It's all very small, but it will all help. But just to kind of put it aside, and going back to Truss and Sunak, I mean, I haven't followed everything they've said. If I had done, I'd be going mad by now. But I think there's been very, very little mention of global warming, and it's a matter to be dealt with if it doesn't interfere with the economy. Nothing must interfere with the economy, which, of course, both Sunak and Truss are going to absolutely expand now that we're free of the shackles of the EU. So that's what I wanted to say. I really would be very interested to know what other people think about these things, because I think these are matters that need discussing. As I say, at the moment we are hurtling towards an abyss, and things cannot go on like this. It's just since Boris Johnson, we've now got corruption in the highest level. We've got incompetence. We've got people serving their own interests, and at the same time, huge proportion of the country is really, really desperately worried about how they're even going to survive this winter, how they're going to feed themselves, and it's not good enough. So normally now I read a few comments from people who've decided to share their wisdom with us, but this week I got, I think, around about 900 comments. I have read them all, and once again, I'd like to really sincerely thank everybody who comments. I really do appreciate it, and some of the comments are really wonderful, and I really would love to reply, but I just don't have the time. It takes me a day to read them all. But funnily enough, this week there have been very few, what you might call, odd ones. In fact, I only found 2, and I would like to share them with you because they're quite interesting. I don't know whether it is because people they know that I read them out, they don't want to be read out, or whether it's because people are perhaps coming to the conclusion, they're realising at long last that Brexit is an absolute, utter catastrophic disaster. So these are the 2 I want to read to you. The first one is from somebody who has commented once or twice in the past. It's somebody who calls themselves Billy Piper's Teeth, and he or she says, EU workers unavailable? How so? We have 6 million EU wage slaves already here. Wage slaves. And the UK doesn't need to be under EU vassalage. That's what I was talking about before, them telling us what to do all the time. Doesn't need to be under EU vassalage in order to take as many additional as she may require. So there's no labour problems with Billy Piper's Teeth. Everything's just fine. Another one who's also commented once or twice before, and it's somebody who kind of tells me where I'm wrong, sort of points out that I don't really understand what I'm talking about. That's the general sort of tone of his comments in the past. And he says, he's called Simon Russell, and he says, there are no right-wing policies, Michael, when you get down to it. I don't know whether he's talking about no right-wing policies in the UK or in the world. I have no idea. He says, every party, when in power, homogenises into a blob of sound bites and no action. No idea what that means. Homogenises into a blob of sound bites. Maybe it's nice that he should explain this to us. But as a Remainer, I'm really glad I'm not stuck in EU countries, Germany, Italy, France, Spain, Hungary, who are attracting a growing hard right, which is hitting 30% of all voters. Le Pen, AFG, he means AFD actually, but anyway, are terrifying, dangerous groupings. To use the word fascist, racist, etc. in the UK is bollocks compared to that lot across the water. So he thinks that in Germany and in France and in Italy and in Spain, they're all going really, really right wing. They have parties, for example, in Germany, the AFD got 4.8 million votes out of I think it was 60 million. So it's not exactly taking the country over. They're not exactly going to have a latter-day Hitler moving in any day now. But he's glad he's not there just in case, and he's glad he's not in France. He prefers to live in a country where the government is taking us ever further right, where they're banning things like being able to demonstrate. They want to be able to imprison whistleblowers, where they want to be able to send asylum seekers to the middle of Africa and dump them there. A society where it's becoming more and more fascist by the day. That's where he prefers to live, rather than in terrible, terrible places like Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and Hungary. Or Hungary, fair enough. I give him his due there. Hungary is not a very nice place, and it's run by a really rather unpleasant man, and nobody would really want to go there. But Germany, Italy, France, and Spain, so much worse because they're going right wing. I mean, how can anybody be so deluded and talk such utter rubbish? But anyway, there you go. It takes all sorts of that, and as I say, those were the only two really that caught my eye. So thank you very much if you've watched this far, and I'm sorry it's probably a little bit longer than usual, but if you have watched this far, thank you very much, and until next time, bye for now.